Just a robot.
Okay, so some of you have probably noticed that my videos are getting shorter and shorter. Well, there's a reason for that. It's because I've been trying to branch out my content and talk about different subjects. But I can't take it anymore! I need to go back in my safe space by making fun of other people for being in their safe spaces. Ha! I was wondering what I should do a video on, and I realized that I've never done a video on MTV or Franchesca Ramsey. And doing a video on MTV is kind of one of the requirements for being an anti-SJW channel. You have to do a video on MTV, BuzzFeed, Lacey Green, Anita Sarkeesian, and if you don't, well then you're probably a lot more original than a lot of the other anti-SJW channels out there. But I'm like one of the only channels out there that actually uses a robot voice consistently. So I'm already original. Now, Franchesca Ramsey is a very interesting individual. A lot of people know how to do mental gymnastics, but Franchesca Ramsey takes home the fucking gold medal.
Ugh, I hate having a birthday during Black History Month. Why do I only get a day when they get an entire month?
You're so smart, babe.
You know what we really need? We need a White History Month.
Did someone say that there should be a White History Month?
Yeah, how'd you know?
Let me guess, you're not racist or anything, but you just think it'd be better if we didn't have a Black History Month in America at all.
Yeah, pretty much.
Ugh, let's get this over with.
And then Chadwick wins cribbage.
It's Mandy and I. Why are we dressed so lame? And what are those stupid ass shoes?
Okay, so the purpose of this video is to show just how much American history would change if black people never existed. And while I do agree that if black people never existed, American history would be very different, what the fuck does this have to do with White History Month? Having a White History Month wouldn't get rid of Black History Month. We have 12 months in a year. And we do have a European History Month, so technically we already have White History Month. Just because you have something new doesn't mean the other thing is going to disappear. Sometimes I want to drink propane instead of oil. But it doesn't mean oil is going to disappear altogether. Second, I know you're not saying this, but it really comes across that you're saying if we got rid of Black History Month, black people would disappear from all of history. Did black people not exist before Black History Month or something? If we had an Elven History Month, would elves suddenly pop into existence? But here's what I think you're really saying. You're saying that people who want a White History Month also don't want a Black History Month, and people who don't want a Black History Month also believe that black people contributed nothing to society. And this video will convince them, oh my god, black people contributed so much! We need a Black History Month! And no other history months! At all. When people like me say there shouldn't be a Black History Month, we're not saying that we should get rid of black history. We're just saying that black history should be taught throughout the year, along with other history to make it more, well, normal. Morgan Freeman, can you explain this for me?
Black History Month you find
Ridiculous.
why?
You're going to relegate my history to a month?
Oh, come on.
What do you do with yours? Which month is White History Month? No,
Well-
no, come on, tell me.
Well, I'm Jewish.
Okay, which month is Jewish History Month?
There isn't one.
Oh, why not?
Yeah.
Do you want one?
No.
No, I don't either. I don't want a Black History Month. Black history is American history.
How are we going to get rid of racism until...
Stop talking about it.
Just one thing, Morgan Freeman. How come every time something convoluted needs explaining, you show up?
Because every time I show up and explain something, I earn a freckle.
Now I could talk about the rest of her video, but Teal Deer did an excellent job on covering it. I'll link it down below if you want to see it. But trust me, this is merely the tip of the Franchesca Ramsey iceberg.
Are the terms cracker, white trash, and redneck racist? I wonder who came up with these phrases.
Oh no, you're not gonna say what I think you're gonna say.
Often when we talk about white privilege, a common rebuttal is, I can't be privileged, I grew up poor, or tell that to a homeless person. But being disadvantaged in one area doesn't negate privilege in others.
Yeah, but class privilege pretty much trumps all other privileges combined.
White privilege doesn't erase the existence of poor white people or the challenges they face due to their class. Nor do discussions of white privilege erase the harmful stereotypes about being poor and white.
Then being privileged really isn't all that great.
Take, for example, the terms cracker, white trash, or redneck. All of these terms have been aggressively used by a white upper class to insult a white underclass.
It doesn't really matter what the word used to mean. There's a thing called the evolution of language, and we should focus on what the word means now.
While these terms have become racialized over time, they have a classist origin that goes way back.
Yeah, just like pretty much every word we use today.
The term was later used by African American slaves and Northern sympathizers as a shortened version of whip cracker, in reference to the whip-wielding plantation workers. So yes, the word cracker was racialized, but the slaves weren't oppressing poor white people by using the term because they were still slaves.
Yeah, but they're not slaves anymore, so they can't really use that excuse.
White trash shows up next. It's believed to have originated in Baltimore in the 1820s as a way for Southern house slaves to disparage poor whites.
So the word does have a racist origin. Granted, it's both racist and classist, but it's racist nonetheless.
All of these terms are rooted in classism, and since classism and racism often go hand in hand, you might be wondering, why didn't this oppressed underclass of poor white people join forces with the oppressed black people? Well, at one time, they actually did, and the white elites were terrified that these groups would eventually overthrow the existing power structure.
So what you're saying is, a bunch of wealthy people, like you, made sure that the poor didn't overthrow you by making poor blacks and poor white people fight one another, kind of like what you do. Isn't it funny that right after the whole 99% versus the 1% thing started, race relations started getting worse and worse? I'm not saying they're connected for sure, but I'm definitely suspicious about it.
Suspicious. The upper class instead stopped having white servants altogether and only relied on slaves. To make matters worse, they literally invented militia jobs for poor white people to police slaves. As Michelle Alexander points out in her book, The New Jim Crow, this not only eliminated the risk of an alliance between black slaves and poor whites, but it also meant poor whites suddenly had a direct stake in the race-based system of slavery. Poor whites weren't any better off, but hey, at least they weren't black. And unfortunately, this strategy has worked for most of American history. Yep.
I don't know why you're putting Trump up there. You really should be putting yourself and the rest of the rich SJWs that are making race relations worse and worse.
Wealthy and accomplished people of color still encounter racism. Just a few years ago, multi-billionaire Oprah Winfrey was in an upscale shop in Switzerland and was told she probably couldn't afford one of the pricey handbags she was looking at. That's because the shop attendant just saw a black woman in the store and not Mother Oprah.
Franchesca, that happened in Switzerland. Do you know where Switzerland is? Historical American racism is not affecting how Swiss people treat black people. If you're going to talk about racism in America, then talk about racism in America! I also love that you pretend that you don't have a lot of money.
The top 0.1% of Americans have as much wealth as the bottom 90% of Americans combined, which doesn't leave much for the rest of us.
Dude, I love how she says the rest of us, as if, yeah, Franchesca, just like all of us, isn't she? Even though according to this article, Franchesca makes 6 figures just off of YouTube, not even counting MTV or her events or VidCon or partnerships. Oh, but I forgot, she's black, so she's gotta be part of the 99%, right?
That clip was from a fellow anti-SJW channel. He did a very good job debunking Franchesca Ramsey. I highly recommend you go check him out. And another YouTuber you should check out is Brad Reed. He did a very good job exposing Franchesca Ramsey for just how much she edits things to make herself look good.
If you're perceptive enough, you'll notice Paul Joseph Watson is the only one whose comment has the amount of upvotes cut off from it. They didn't cut it off from the comments disagreeing with her that didn't get any upvotes. And they didn't cut it off from the comments that agreed with her and did get upvoted. I even checked the original comment and it has over 900 thumbs up. It's almost like they didn't want you to know that people agreed with him. Crazy, right?
And Franchesca Ramsey does shit like this a lot. Every time she talks about someone being privileged or being an oppressor or being rich, it's always a fucking white male. And every time she talks about someone being hurt by the system, it's always a non-white guy.
When I criticize the school-to-prison pipeline, lack of police training, workplace discrimination, or our court system, some people don't want to hear it or think about it.
I also love the part where she says, some people just don't want to think about it. And she shows a picture of a white guy covering his ears. Franchesca, people like me are thinking about it. But guess what? We think you're full of shit.
Are you A, mad at the Department of Education for not training teachers better? B, mad at your state congressional representatives for not pushing for bigger education budgets? Or C, mad at me for talking about this because it's easier to direct your anger towards someone making you feel guilty instead of being angry at the complicated as world of institutional racism?
We're mad at you for spreading bullshit information. God, I hate it when people do this. You're mad at me for some bullshit reason that no one would ever be mad over.
Well, Dr. Robin DiAngelo, a white critical racial and social justice scholar, has described the discomfort some white people have towards talking about racism as white fragility. Since white people often grow up in environments where discussing race is seen as taboo, some react defensively when the topic of racism comes up. Dr. DiAngelo says this manifests itself as outward displays of emotions, such as anger, fear, and guilt, and behaviors such as argumentation, silence, and leaving the stress-inducing situation.
Franchesca, you do realize that if a white person doesn't agree with every single thing the far left says, he's going to be labeled a racist, right? Hell, even if a white person does that, they might be labeled as a racist. And by argumentation, do you mean disagreeing with you?
It's also hard to think about these issues on an institutional level, and because talking about racism automatically makes a lot of white people uncomfortable, they sometimes begin to think they're being personally attacked or blamed. Recent studies show that white Americans believe bias against white people is a bigger issue in our country than ever before. This, however, is simply not true.
No, Franchesca, it absolutely is. You can record yourself torturing a white guy, you can say, fuck white people, fuck Trump, and the media will say it wasn't a hate crime.
That's probably not very popular. We cannot callously go about classifying things as a hate crime.
What do you say to the people who dragged a poor white guy out of a car and beat him?
Oh my goodness, poor white people, please, oh my, stop.
Let's not forget about all the BuzzFeed questions for white people videos. If those questions were directed at anybody else, the media would label BuzzFeed as an alt-right organization that is trying to spread racism or something like that.
Statistically, from mortgage lending to police brutality, the reality for white Americans tends to be way more positive than for black Americans and other people of color.
What about Asians? On average, they're doing much better than white people. And also, I love how you're trying to make white people seem like they're all rich while black people are all poor. You're not pointing out race issues. You're pointing out class issues and saying they're race issues.
By refusing to engage with the actual issues, the people who shout the absurd accusation, "You're racist against white people," are really just attempting to shut down the conversation.
Oh, but when your side is calling anyone who disagrees with you a racist, sexist, homophobe, that's okay, and it's not shutting down the conversation.
Imagine if people who think I'm racist against white people found something they enjoyed online instead of watching Decoded every week and complaining in the comments.
Holy shit, I think we just found T-Moss Boss's mom.
If you don't like the video, then don't watch it.
Damn, that explains a lot. But probably her most cringiest video was when she was defending PC culture.
Is PC culture destroying freedom of speech?
Which dated meme should I use? Should I use the one of M. Bison saying, yes, yes? Or should I use the one of M. Bison turning around and saying, of course? Or maybe I should just stop using dated memes, or memes altogether, and actually try to be funny on my own for once. Nah.
Of course!
If you've ever called out racism, sexism, ableism, or any other oppressivism, you've probably been accused of being too PC.
No, people get called too PC when they call anyone who disagrees with them a racist, sexist, homophobe. Which is not even being PC, which is why I call them an SJW instead of too PC. Because it's not even political correctness anymore. It's the opposite.
Political correctness is avoiding words or behaviors that—
Oh my god, he does prove that political correctness takes away your freedom of speech. If you have to avoid saying certain things, then that's less freedom.
Exclude, marginalize, or insult groups of people who are socially disadvantaged or discriminated against. Basically, treating people with respect.
You mean treating people like you with respect. But people who disagree with you? Well, they're racist, sexist, you guys get the drill. I've already said this so many times.
Now, if you ask me, that doesn't sound like a bad thing. But a recent poll by Fairleigh Dickinson University found that 68% of Americans and 81% of Republicans agreed that a big problem this country has is being politically correct. Even 62% of Democrats polled agreed that being PC was getting out of hand.
Franchesca, it's not your job to use evidence to debunk your arguments, it's my job.
For these folks, political correctness is synonymous with weakness or being overly sensitive.
And shutting people down, don't forget that.
Similar to the new term social justice warrior, calling someone PC is a way to derail and dismiss conversations about inequality.
No, Franchesca, it's the other way around, and you know it. Before they even say the word, you're too PC or you're a social justice warrior, the other person has already dismissed or derailed the conversation because it hurt their fifis.
Here's the thing, it's not just about hurt feelings, it's about calling out oppressive power structures, and that's where the misunderstanding comes in.
Franchesca, I know you're trying to make a straw man out of us and say that's the reason why we call you social justice warriors. But the thing is, I've seen your like-dislike bar. Not many people are buying into it.
What's perceived as being too sensitive is usually someone speaking out against lazy, offensive language that doesn't usually get challenged. That's because the group of people that those words hurt historically haven't had the opportunities to have their voices heard.
Ah, yes, historical oppression. How do you think your ancestors would feel if they knew you were using them as a shield? Also, I love that you're using a black guy to call out racist bullshit from a white guy. You're about as subtle as a nuclear explosion.
And the people who call that being too PC are often in privileged positions and don't want to or haven't had to think about what they're saying, or the consequences that come with it.
Franchesca, I've seen the income of the people who talk about you, and the income you get. You're way more fucking privileged than them.
You can't take away my freedom of speech just because you're offended. Well, yeah. In America, freedom of speech simply means the government cannot prohibit you from expressing yourself. It's why you can criticize Obama without being thrown in jail.
Okay, this is an argument I hear a lot, and technically Franchesca Ramsey is right. Someone blocking you on Twitter, or not inviting you to their college, or even punching you in the face is not taking away your freedom of speech. Unless, of course, they break your jaw or something. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying any of this is good, and I do think they're total pussies who can't handle an opposing argument, but they're not taking away your freedom of speech. They're just censoring you. However, certain SJWs in places like Canada are taking away freedom of speech. In Canada, by law, you have to call people by their preferred pronouns or you're breaking the law.
But on an interpersonal level, freedom of speech does not mean freedom from consequences. Technically, no subject on earth is off limits. You can say whatever you want, but in turn, people are allowed to respond however they want.
Yes, Franchesca, we're aware of that. But you need to understand that it works both ways.
The fact that you can comment means you're not being censored.
Maybe not on your channel, but for other channels, yeah.
In fact, political correctness is expanding free speech. We're adding words to the dictionary every year in an effort to promote more inclusive and respectful speech. Last year alone, the OED added microaggressions, mansplain, and all.
Franchesca, that word is used to silence people. And just because you add more words, it doesn't mean you have more freedom of speech. Just like if new guns were made, it wouldn't loosen the grip of gun control. But despite everything I've said about Franchesca so far, I don't know if it's all her fault. She is an actor, and I'm pretty sure someone else pays her to say these things. While I do think she believes most of the stuff she is saying, I don't know for sure if she believes all of it. I just hope she does what Lacey Green did, and just leave her echo chamber just for a little bit to talk to someone on the other side. My eyes have seen the glory of the cleansing of YouTube. Debunking SJWs and feminazis too. We criticize reactionists in hopes they get the boot. Just a robot marches on.